Hello and welcome to another episode of Onesies. My name's Andrew.
My name's Emily.
And this is the podcast where we talk about one season wonders and blunders. Wow, it rhymes. We never
Oh
thought
my
of that until
God, that's
now.
so good. I love it.
And this is our last episode of season one, which is talking about Free Spirit, a 1989 to 1990 ABC sitcom starring Corinne Bohrer and Frank Luz and Alison Hannigan and two people who
Are no longer actors.
No longer actors, so we don't have to remember their names right now.
Eden Gross and Paul Schur.
Okay.
I remember.
Well, some of us remember.
I think I like the show better than you.
We'll see how you feel after the episode. All right. So this is the last episode of the season where we cover the last 4 episodes that we have access to thanks to ctv.ca. We are going to miss out on the episode where the teenage boy gets split into 2 different personalities, Goofus and Gallant-like. And so I don't know why it's not on there. The other show I watched on CTVCA, the David Caruso show, Michael Hayes, which aged better than this, but not age great. I think they left an episode off because of terrorism stuff, because it's pre 9/11. And I'm wondering if they left off this episode because the Goofus version of the teenage boy is just a rapist. Because
well, he's already a Goofus, just all of the time. He's
right.
A Goofus.
So the other one's rapees, so they just accelerated to rapist. Anyway, we'll start off. Do you have the titles?
New Secretary is the first episode that we're watching.
Very disappointing. Okay, so my line or my 3 notes that I want to bring up. I wrote down bathroom joke, but I didn't write down what the joke was.
I don't remember that. Yeah. Oh, yes, I do. I do. I do.
Yeah, it was a great joke. Mm-hmm. Fellini. That'll be one of mine. Steal that from you. That's actually going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And then, sure. Laugh track trying hard.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to put down, so 2 of my things are clothing related. Get out of these clothes. Business Winnie is my second thing. And Frank as Apollo is my third thing during the sequence at the end of the episode. I want to talk about Frank Luz and his amazing acting skills. So the plot of this episode is that Thomas is the lawyer for a gentleman, Mr. Albert Stillman, who is divorcing his wife, Mrs. Blanche Stillman, and they're preparing for the divorce. He loses his secretary last minute. I think she said she'll be in when hell freezes over. And Winnie steps in to be his new secretary and decides that this is the perfect opportunity to save a marriage based on very, very few clues that she gets from both Robert Reed, who plays Mr. Stillman, and Florence Henderson, who plays Mrs. Stillman. So we get a Brady reunion of sorts.
Now, I think we mentioned last time, we are not actually doing the Brady's next. We'll tell you what season 2 is going to be at the end of the episode, but it is not the Brady's yet, because we also would have to do the Brady Brides and a Very Brady Wedding and the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. But that came out, the Brady's show came out in early 1990 on CBS. And that was sort of based on the popularity, as it were, of the Very Brady Christmas movie from 1988. So like Robert Reed and Florence Henderson were back in the public eye a bit. And so She's kind of really good on this, for all things considered, I thought.
Florence, yeah, I think I thought she did pretty good. I mean,
Robert Reed, on the other hand, there's where the laugh track comes in. Like, it's a bunch of bad one-liners and a lot of laugh track, and it's there. The laugh track thing I notice occasionally with sitcoms is, and only really when you marathon them, because you see the difference in how they use the laugh track. But like when we watch Frasier in bulk, they're like week episodes where you're like, why are they using the laugh track so much? Yeah. And it's because they need to convince people it's funny. And they really tried that here. So yeah, Winnie decides she's going to save the marriage based on Albert not wanting to say his wife's name for a while, and then the wife coming over and bringing his medication. And so she decides they still love each other and they need to get back together. And Thomas doesn't feel that way because Thomas wants to make some money.
He wants to make some money. And so he's
this is all. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's also, they comment on how much lawyers suck because they just want to make money off of people repeatedly.
Yeah. I mean, 3 or 4 jokes probably in the whole thing. So Winnie comes, I'm going to talk about Winnie and her wardrobe in this because she comes down and before Thomas's secretary quits, and she's in her robe, some kind of leggings maybe. And once the secretary calls and quits, Winnie is trying out to prove herself to be a good replacement. So she uses her magic because her magic now is just goofs and gags, right? It's just, how can she use it to make a joke, or how can she use it to, she's not really using it to do a lot of housekeeping, but she gets on, she's wearing this outfit that looks kind of vaguely witchy. It's a very light robe and it's very flowy, and her hair is always Stevie Nicks, right? It's always curly and big and weird. And she gets on the typewriter and she magics the typewriter to just start typing something. We don't know what. And she's playing it like a piano, like she's faking typing like a piano. And it's the funniest scene besides the Dan Florek scene in the whole show, in my opinion. She's typing and she's playing it like a piano, like a mad person, because Thomas can't see her because he's busy looking at something else, being a doofus. And she kicks her leg up in the air and she pulls whatever it is she's been typing, or the typewriter's been typing, out of the typewriter, hands it to Thomas. And he's like, "Oh, did you type this?" We don't know what it is. What is she typing to prove that she can be a good secretary? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what she's typing. But it was so funny. And based on that, he says, "Okay, well, you can be my new assistant as long as, or only until the end of this case. Once the divorce is final, I don't need you anymore for this, in this capacity." And she's like, "Oh, great. What can I do first?" And he says, "Get out of those clothes." And there's a brief nod to obviously the inappropriateness of it, except Winnie takes it as a joke. So, and she turns it into she goes, "Oh, Mr. Harper." And then she turns and walks away. Right. But this is getting to my larger point about the whole show. There is no sexual chemistry between these two characters, none whatsoever. And while I appreciate that, because I hate the will they, won't they thing in most TV shows, I feel like it's so frustrating because it's so obvious. It's just such an obvious thing. You have this attractive woman living in your home, taking care of your children as if she's their mother. And
they've used it as a plot point.
And they use it as Yeah.
They've literally been like, what if we were dating?
Yeah.
And it's just like, where does that go? Nowhere. Once the episode's over.
Nowhere.
One of the other episodes we'll talk about has an end. Or is it this episode? No, one of the other episodes does have them having another moment, I think. But yeah. So then she gets on her lawyer garb, which is fantastic.
Then she comes back down and the kids are waiting for their breakfast. And there's a couple cracks between the kids about how stupid Rob is, because Rob is stupid. We all know this at this point. And she looks fantastic. It's like 90s. We're kind of merging into the 90s power suit. She looks so good. Her glasses, it's almost like, oh, just take those glasses off, one of those teen movies, and suddenly you're some gorgeous woman, right? Except she looks gorgeous. She looks great. So I loved that. She has 2 of those business outfits, and I loved them both so much. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have on that. I'm sorry. I went off on a tear. I thought she looked great.
It's fine. Yeah, and the sort of mad Phantom of the Opera keyboard moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And around that time is when you realize that Robert Reed is not going to be funny, and like uncomfortable and not likable, because he's like a dick. Like, so they try to make Florence Henderson the bad guy, but it's Robert Reed's just a dick, and he's not like charming at all. And I was like, oh, the problem with Robert Reed is he can't play a dick. Like, as long as he's playing Mike Brady, who's, loves his kids and blah, 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 like, that's fine. But like, if you just can't play a dick, he has no range. So yeah, Winnie's going to get fired at one point because of trying to get them back together. And then she magics Thomas's like legal briefcase away from him, so she has to go to the final deposition or whatever with the lawyer, with the lawyers. And there's actually a black woman plays the judge, which I think makes it the second black person on the show in the entire season. There was Alex Desert was in the high school, and so I mean, 2 black people out of however many. I mean, that's probably more than Connecticut actually had in 1989. But yeah, so that was interesting. Also, the other lawyer who Thomas has been talking about being like a shark the whole time. They're like bros.
Yeah,
like
they totally bro out. And I think it's a reveal. Sorry, you were going to say something.
You think it's an actual reveal that they're like, no, he's not a shark. They're bros who like perv the same waitresses.
No, so Thomas walks into the deposition and they start talking, and I don't think that we're supposed to realize that he's the lawyer. He's the other lawyer that he's been shit talking the whole time. I think the reveal is when the judge says, okay, gentlemen, we can talk about this later. It's time to get down to business. And then they start yelling at each other. So I think that's the reveal, that's actually the lawyer that he was shitting on the whole episode. I don't know. Maybe. I have higher expectations. And so I'm reading into it more.
But the guest star is Alan Blumenfeld, who will be familiar if you've watched TV from the last 30 years and seen a number of movies. But I was trying to figure out what I remembered him from. He was in Tin Man as one of the Tin Men. And he was also the man with camera in Inner Space at the beginning of it. So like, this is a big step down from his bit parts in movies, just saying. So, so the bathroom joke, let's get to that because we're about to get to Apollo. The bathroom joke is that whenever somebody can't come to the phone, it's because they're in the bathroom. And so Thomas tells the joke with something with the like first receptionist or the first secretary. Then Robert Reed tries to tell the joke and we get a long laugh track with it. And then the judge is going to make a joke about it too. Like, say you're in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, man. It's 2022. Do we really want to hear about when people are in the bathroom as much as we turned out we were going to have to hear about them being in the bathroom thanks to work from home? No.
Also, there's a funny thing between. I mean, it's not funny. It's icky, but between Robert Reed and Winnie, when she's trying before the hearing, she's trying to like get some more information from him and about his soon to be ex-wife, and I saw her. She's a very beautiful woman, and he's like, oh yeah, she always looked good when she wanted to. Laugh track, and then. Especially when she was exercising. And it's like, ew, gross. First of all, Florence Henderson is a tiny, petite, beautiful lady. Secondly, even if she wasn't exercising, I'm sure she would be a tiny, petite, beautiful lady. And you don't have to be tiny and petite to be beautiful. But it was just kind of icky. And then he said something about like licking her face when she was sweaty or something. Did you catch that? It was really gross. Yeah, you didn't catch that. Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Ugh. At least I hope he was talking about her face. I hope he didn't say cheek, as in like butt cheek. Butt. Sorry.
The sex lives of the Bradys. So then at the hearing, Winnie magics everyone to the future to see what happens if they get the divorce.
And in this future scenario, all of the characters that are in this hearing, the stenographer, the judge, all the lawyers, and Winnie and Thomas, as well as the Bradys, are characters in this whole future scenario, which is weird. But they're different people. Yeah.
And so I don't know why, like, so Winnie is Albert's ditzy girlfriend who thinks Crocodile Dundee is a foreign film. And you can just talk about Apollo.
So Apollo is played by Frank Luz, who is a New York street tough / artist. And he's really going broad. I mean, his accent isn't super thick, but he's got that, like Andrew Dice Clay's younger artistic brother. And it's pretty dumb. Like, it's pretty stupid. And he is allegedly married to Mrs. Stillman, or the former Mrs. Stillman. And she seems like she's completely uninterested. They have an interaction and she does not seem thrilled. But likewise, Mr. Stillman does not seem thrilled with his date, despite being in a beautiful crushed velvet dress. Again, her wardrobe is fantastic because she's dumb. And yeah, like you said, she doesn't think that, or she thinks that Crocodile Dundee is a foreign film. I hated it.
It was awful. It was an awful way to finish it. And then, like, it got while I was watching it, I was like, oh, what Fellini? Because he asks his ex-wife out on a date to the Fellini. To the
new Fellini movie.
New Fellini film, which would have to be Intervista.
Intervista, yeah. I looked that up too.
Right. But then I'm like, I think we're giving them too much credit. And they just used Fellini as a
foreign film 101. Everybody knows what he is. They could identify that as a foreign film director, and Johnny Beer Can in Iowa, who might be watching the show, would recognize.
And you just can't imagine. It's like one of Robert Reed's more painful deliveries, because you're like, no, they're not. They don't watch Fellini. But then after it gets back to the present and they decide not to get a divorce and give it another shot, they're going to go home and fuck. And after they watch the Fellini movie. And so I don't know.
Fellini's never made me want to fuck. ever.
I was like, are they going to watch Knights of Cabiria? That's a weird fucking kink. Like, that's terrible. But I mean, Connecticut white Republicans, maybe, right? Like,
I don't know. Fellini's never made me want to fuck. So
no. But then the last scene is the kids eating too much junk food because they've been in charge of themselves.
Oh yeah, we totally forgot that. Yeah.
Well, it's because they're not in the episode. I was like, as shitty as the episode kind of was, and what a waste it was of the Brady's, at least the fucking kids weren't in the episode. Like,
I have something to say about that later on, but I'm so used to now TV shows have like an A plot and a B plot.
mm-hmm.
And the B plot a lot of times would be the kids doing the grocery shopping. But they would cut to the kids doing the stuff, and it just never does. So I'm so used to that, like A plot, B plot, that when it doesn't happen, I'm like, how come I haven't seen half the cast in this whole episode? Like, so it's very bizarre.
They don't have the money for the Brady's and the kids. Come on now.
I guess.
But they do actually go. I mean, they have 2 more sets than usual, because usually they never leave the house, right?
Yeah.
And they went to the art gallery and to the law talking place. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I didn't have anything. I was disappointed.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, it's not going to be the worst guest star of these episodes you talk about by far, actually. But it was really disappointing. Like, I have long been I've appreciated Robert Reed's success as Mike Brady, right? And like, Florence Henderson's really good. You can't, like, there's no asterisk next to her name with this. Like, she's great. It's like, she's too good in it.
Yeah.
Like a show where she and Winnie like went on a road. If they played bank robbers in a movie, that'd be a fucking awesome movie.
I would watch it. 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Robert Reed was terrible.
And the whole episode was terrible. It was
just bad.
Except Winnie's wardrobe. I loved that. But
there's not going to be a lot of good to talk about the rest of the episodes either, though. So get ready.
Yeah, get ready, folks.
Get ready.
So
get ready for
Radio Nights. Actually, the one thing I did like about that came out of this episode. This whole block came out of this episode. My 3 things are: what kind of law does Thomas practice? It's just a general question. They talk about mom again, briefly, the kid's mom, and Timothy Stack.
Yes.
Those are my 3.
So mine are shore leave canceled. That's ducks for me. And I'm either between rainy day insert shot, but there's not much to talk about there. But could do the peeing the bed, since it comes up again in a later episode.
Yeah, and that's one of the first things, and that's one of the first things I have listed, because I thought that was a funny joke that they did. But so we start out this episode. Jean is having a bad dream. First of all, the dream sequence is kind of weird too, where dad is in the shower and allegedly he's singing in the shower, but we don't hear him, and he gets sucked down the drain. So Jean wakes up screaming, and dad rushes in to save him. And he says something like, Jean, are you okay? Calms him down. He said, Dad, you're alive and you're not wet. And the dad says something like, no, I'm not. Are you? And Jean's like, come on, Dad. And then he looks down and he goes, no, I'm fine. I thought that was funny. Whatever. It's a silly peeing the bed joke. He's 10 years old, though. Whatever. So that sets up the scene.
So you're shaming 10-year-old bed peers?
No, I'm not.
Okay. It's also the most concern Thomas has shown for Jean in the entire show.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You know what?
This good of a dad, you wouldn't need a housekeeper.
I was expecting Winnie to come in. To that note, I was expecting it to be Winnie, not to be Thomas. So Thomas has won some big environmental case, which gets to my first point. What kind of law does he practice? We've seen him within the Dan Florek episode doing some business law.
Real estate.
Yeah, real estate, divorce law, and now this environmental protection stuff. So in my experience, lawyers just kind of focus on one area. I don't know.
He's just not good at any of it. So he's just trying to find something.
Trying to find his niche. Okay. So he's going on a radio show and he has to leave the kids home alone with Winnie during a lightning storm. And part of the problem is that Jean is terrified of storms.
Jean is very scared. And then, so we already sort of did the episode about Thomas being worried about leaving the kids home alone. And then obviously there's no continuity with that. Like, so it's just different. And so, I mean, that's not, it was rare that a sitcom of this era would acknowledge something from 4 episodes before. So like, this is pre, most things, because the goal is, of course, you get to your 100 episodes and they're shown out of order in syndication, and it's not enough to make somebody stop watching the show, right?
Right.
So, but still, and again, maybe this is just because we're watching it in bulk. It just draws attention to the fact that the writers didn't seem to have any sense of a direction for the show.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, even on Night Court that we're watching, we catch callbacks to previous episodes. And, my husband and I had both commented that we thought that was surprising that they would call back to different things happening, but they don't always. Sometimes they do. They don't always.
I'm trying to think. I feel like Cheers sort of started doing that in 82. And so like, that's when it sort of became a thing. But also, what other big sitcoms? I mean, All in the Family had to do it because of like casting and guest star changes. So, I mean, it had been around for a while at that point, but we're also comparing much better shows.
Yeah.
To Free Spirit. Though I do have a note about a writer, but not for this episode. So, so Thomas goes to the radio station and there's it should be funny, but like kind of isn't gag about how like he thinks he's getting a limo, but he's really getting a taxi and then he's going to have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be funnier if we didn't also have Jean's fears included in there. Like it's kind of the episode's kind of a tone mismatch, especially once we get to Winnie's magic and like how it manifests. But okay, get us to the radio station, then we'll talk about Winnie's magic.
Okay, so Thomas goes to the radio station to talk about this big case, and he is under the expectation, or he expects that he will be talking about the case and how he won it and what good it's going to do for the community. And I guess he saved some lake. They'd never really go into much detail about it, except it was a case against a chemical company. So
Bowman Chemical. Okay. So the disc jockey who is working is sort of a crappy version of like a shock jock.
Like all he wants to do is be sort of not, I don't even want to say transgressive. He just wants to be kind of
abrasive.
Jerk. Yeah, he's just an abrasive jerk. But it's played by Timothy Stack, who, if you don't know who he is, Google him and you have seen him in everything. And he is so funny normally. In this, he plays being a jerky sort of shock jock. Okay. But he really adds nothing to that. I thought he was completely wasted on this. Completely wasted.
It's incredible how this show, outside of Dan Florek, has just burned up all of its guest stars. Like, we're not even to the worst yet. Like, you got to wait till next, or get to the next episode. But yeah, I'm like, who is that? It's Principal Belding, right? Or is that who he is?
No. He's just one of those guys who's been in a million things. He was in some Christopher Guest movies. He was in an episode of Night Court recently. I mean, he was in the 80s and 90s. It was just in a ton of things. He was in everything.
He's the dad from Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Yes. He's also the dad. Yeah.
So, and so he's just kind of a dick, and
he's pushing Thomas to not talk about what he wants to talk about. So he instead is trying to just sensationalize, why are lawyers out to, this is another thing. He asks, like, if your client is guilty, what do you do if you know your client is guilty? And he's like, very professional answer. I just do my best to defend them, to give them the best defense. So blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, you heard it here, folks. Lawyers are trying to get serial killers out on the streets to kill you and your family. And Thomas is very distraught about that. But again, it begs the question, what kind of law does Thomas practice?
The follow-up to that thing about the serial killers is somebody calls in to shit on Thomas. And it's a judge.
Yeah, but it's a string of bleeps. I loved that. That was fun.
And the punchline is it's a judge. And I'm kind of like, I mean, that's a little bit more realistic than it ought to be, right? Like, So then Bowman Chemical turns out to be a sponsor, which I was like, so why didn't Thomas ask him what it's like having the guilty party as the sponsor? Like, it's just so.
Thomas didn't hear because he was going to the bathroom. He was out in the hallway, remember?
No, I don't. Because I avoid bathroom humor.
Me too.
Exactly. Why do I have this? So this big thunderstorm has knocked out the river's overflowing. It's going to knock out the power multiple times. It's going to knock out the phones, which is going to not make any sense in a second. But so back at home, Winnie is trying to keep Jean calm and using her magic to turn on lights and bring the electricity back and things like that. The problem is thunderstorms mess with her magic, and all of her magic turns into like...
Her magic goes on perv mode. She manifests a bathing suit clad beer model, some sort of saloon where you can like pay 10 cents to dance with presumably sex workers of some kind.
And Rob is just thrilled by all of this, the teenage boy. And it's just kind of like, it raises that like sort of, how to phrase this? You didn't watch Westworld, so we'll just phrase it the way it is. The fuck android or the holodeck fuck, right? Like from start, like, so Rob's like down to fuck a like a not real person that Winnie has magicked into existence. Like, and he's mad when she won't let him hook up.
Pay his 10 cents. Yeah.
He has 20, doesn't he? Or at some point? Like,
I don't know. He asks, I wonder what I can get for $1. Gross.
My note after Shore Leave canceled is that's when Winnie takes off or turns off the magic, whatever place. And my note was just, oh no, teen boys are supposed to be rapey because that's what the show has taught me.
Yeah.
And then, the phone. So the phones go out while they're on the phone, finding out that Thomas isn't going to be home till morning. The plot for the family is going to be Winnie getting her magic in order to get Jean to be able to talk to Thomas over the phone somehow. Except all the phones are out and Thomas is at a call-in radio station where he's answering phone calls the whole night. So only the residential phones are out.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if he's in New York or if he's still in Connecticut, just at a local radio station. I'm not, they don't really.
Who would care about this stupid lake, right? Like,
yeah.
So I assumed it was local. I don't know.
So Winnie, this is another point that I had forgotten, but I just wrote down because I remembered. Winnie goes out to get her magic back, and she is gonna she's gonna grabs the fire poker and go outside in this thunderstorm, and apparently getting struck by lightning helps. She comes back inside after getting struck by lightning. First of all, she's super psyched and wants to do it again, but she has hair that looks like the Hatchet Man, the ICP Hatchet Man, and it is so freaking funny. And if you don't know what the Hatchet Man is, just Google ICP Hatchet Man. It is so hilarious, her goofy hair, and it just kind of goes away. They just kind of cut to a different scene. And
she magics it off.
Oh, does she?
She says the hard part is going to be fixing her hair. So she tried to fix the phone, but it turned into a duck. But then when she gets back in with her magic, she finger magics a new phone. And at this point, I think they just call it finger magic. Like they really for the first 5 episodes, they had the finger magic in episode 2, and then they forgot about it for a second. But then somebody remembered and they're like, no, it's finger magic every time. Yeah. So she finger magics a phone into existence, and then she finger magics her hair. She goes, oh, this is the hard part. And then finger magics her hair back. And I was like, what was hard about that? It wasn't hard. And so they're able to call Thomas, but then the phones go out again. But Thomas, she pretends to be a caller for one of the radio shows. And Thomas reads Jean a bedtime story the way he likes it. And
she tricks the DJ and the producers into letting her on the air and concocts some goofy story that Thomas recognizes that it's actually his son to read this bedtime story. Again, 10-year-old and a bedtime story. Again, I'm not shaming. Bedtime stories are important, but this is very sentimental. It was a cute moment in the beginning. It was a very cute moment in the beginning. And it's a cute moment at the end. You don't think so?
Yeah, at the beginning, I guess it's a cute moment at the end. It's just, we left out the whole Jessie subplot.
Where she's getting her hair done?
Getting her hair done. And you're just this is just the episode's just so full of trash. Literal garbage on the ground. It's hard to pick out the better moments. Some of the DJ's best stuff is when he's bored with Thomas and playing basketball in the studio. And it's that shouldn't be your best stuff in an episode, right?
No.
But, and then at the end, when Thomas gets back, the big thing is Rob gets to tell him everything that happened just without the context that Winnie's a witch. So he describes what she does, but not that she's a witch who was able to do those things. and Thomas thinks Rob's full of shit and a goofball. And then the duck phone walks into the kitchen, and it's another one of those moments where Thomas is like, "Oh, gee, what's going on in the house?"
And it starts ringing, and the kids chase after it. It's like, "Oh no, the duck's for me!" And it was kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, for this show, yeah. Show, it's kind of funny.
My final thing on this one is music. You had mentioned music in a previous episode of this podcast that it was very heavy-handed. This was also very heavy-handed, and it sounded like a sound-alike to either a Friday the 13th or Halloween movie, and I don't remember.
Scary music, like, yes, it was very scary music for
and they really laid it on thick. It was real thick on this one. Whereas other previous episodes, again, there just didn't seem to be any consistency episode to episode with laugh track music, stuff like that. It was very, very odd.
Also, is there the implication that Gene's over wetting the bed and he's now under wet dreams?
At the end, yeah, he says
he has a
Thomas
dream
asks
that
him, yeah,
he's not old enough to tell his dad about or something.
Yeah,
and
gross.
You're just like, ew. Gross. But it actually is a nice segue to the first joke of next episode. So what the Farfignugan is this episode called?
Blast from the Past. And here we have our greatest guest star. The best guest star. I can tell by your face.
Is he that bad on everything?
I don't know. I don't really remember. So we're talking about Dave Coulier. He plays Winnie's fiance, who after 150 years has finally come to claim his prize. He's had to, I don't know. He had to do a quest. Okay. So I'm so tired already.
Okay. All right. So things we'll be talking about in this episode are Pinball Wizard, Stacked Like the Reagan Court. Oh, and I don't know what. And Martin Pascoe. So that's going to be,
I have
no idea what that one is.
I have no idea, but I have so few notes for this one because I was just so exhausted. I had stacked like the Reagan Courts 2, and then I had Witch Dimension, and then I just had Dave Coulier. He's exhausting.
It's exasperating. So the episode starts with Thomas has gotten a real job and he's going to not work in the house anymore, which I can't remember if that's part of the next episode. And so he told Rob that one of the women he works with is stacked like the Reagan Court. And and somebody's like, "You mean conservative?" And like, there's a wink. And he's like, "I meant conservative." And Rob's like, "That's not what you told me it meant, Dad." Or there's just some creepy like, yeah, Dad likes the chick at work and told his 16-year-old son about her being stacked. And you're just like, these guys are just fucking garbage. And it's just one of those moments with this show where you're like, oh God, I really hope that I wouldn't have laughed at this when I was 12, but oh fuck, I probably might have. I don't know. The show's really bad. I don't know if I could have watched this at the age of like 10, right? Like, you've got to be like, Small Wonder was on when I was like 7 or 8. Like, that's about, and I don't even know if Small Wonder is worse than this, right? Like, who knows? We're not going to find out on this show because it went on for 4 seasons. But yeah, so Thomas is going to move out of the house and the kids are thrilled that they're going to get to redecorate his office. And we find out that's because Winnie just turns it into an arcade with her magic and is like, "Here, you can be in there for 9 hours a day. I don't give a shit." Like,
yeah. And Dave Coulier manifests himself out of one of the video games and scares the shit out of the kids because this dude just comes out, and there's some weird, like, there's this weird music, and he sort of comes out of it like a genie from a bottle. And he's just annoying the whole time. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I hate him. And he's cheesy and he tells goofy jokes and his delivery is really like hammy.
Well, and so the witch dimension that you already brought up, because this is, they mentioned that he's been gone for 150 years, right? And that flashback would then be to 1839. But we've already established that when he was born in 1660 or something like that.
1665.
Right. And I was like, did you fuck up the continuity? No. It was 150 years ago in the witch dimension, which is a place where Winnie lives with her family, who must all be witches and warlocks, which is an interesting development. And so that would mean that, like, Winnie's not human at all, right? Like in the witch rules of this show. So we meet her dad, who is played by
that guy from Big Fat Greek Wedding. I can't remember his name.
Michael Constantine, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He's also in The Hustler with Paul Newman. Thank you very much. He played Big John. And he's like, he's not god awful, which is a lot for this show. But he's just playing like a dad who wants his daughter to get married, but then it turns out he's actually cool because, like, she doesn't want to marry this fucking twerp.
But why didn't he ask her in the beginning? Why did he accept the ghost? And
it was
one
1889, and he didn't know she was a person yet, man. There hadn't been women's lib.
I guess.
So
there hadn't been witches lib.
Witches lib. There is like a note about how they made goat burritos. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so they know about burritos in the witch dimension before white folks did. And then it's weird because it flips over to mom usually making gruel. But yeah, so then they sent Kevin on a quest. Kevin's Dave Coulier, sorry. My next note on Dave Coulier is, wow, Dave Coulier sucks. But he's then gone back in time and found he's gone all over the world and found all the crap that Winnie needs to make the agreement, which includes a joke about the kosher meal on a plane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that kosher? Is that a punch? It doesn't seem like
it. Yeah. Like, so the joke is something about how he felt sick after eating it. And it's like, kosher food is just blessed, right? It's like, there's no
hoofed animals and there's a certain preparation. Like, I don't think remember when everybody started using kosher salt, it didn't lead to a bunch of people getting sick. It just seems like a fucking shitty, like, semi-Jewish joke from Dave Coulier.
And I blame the writers. I mean, he delivered it, but I blame the writers. That was just a bad joke.
It was just, And so then there's the
Amish joke too, where shaking the hand of 14 virgins, he's like, I'd like to thank the Amish. And it's like, well, look around you in this room. There are 3 little virgins right there. Like, presumably.
Right. Well, that was the other thing is I'm like, how hard was it you to find 14 virgins in 150 years?
Yeah.
Like, go to one fucking maternity ward, you idiot. Like, but I mean, that is possible. He is a fucking idiot too. Like, on top of everything else, like
he's annoying. He's stupid. He's kind of pathetic and whiny, which is great at the end. We'll come to that at the end. He gets a what for from Winnie, which is good.
But then, but he's a warlock, so he magics them a wedding ceremony where dad is there and everybody else
seems surprised that suddenly they're dressed up in tuxedos, and he does not at all seem surprised to be sitting in first of all, a different dimension. Second of all, he's presumably not wearing a tuxedo around all the time. Third, he doesn't know most of the people in the room. So he is not surprised at all to be there, where the kids are like looking around, looking down at their clothing. That's
right. They're shitty humans. They don't know anything.
I guess. Maybe.
He's a warlock.
Maybe.
So the way that Winnie gets out of the wedding initially is that she says she's already married and she's married to Thomas. So that's going to require her convincing Thomas that Kevin is an old boyfriend and that they are happily married, so she can let him down easy. Of course, Thomas doesn't know she's a witch, and Kevin assumes she has told him that Thomas is a warlock, which leads to some sports jokes. And I mean, it's kind of nice that Frank Lutz at least gets to outact some dude in the show, right? Like, just
yeah,
far and away.
And the thing I liked most about that little plot device is the kids are on board with Winnie being their mommy. Like as soon as it's announced, oh, I'm already married to Thomas, the father of my beautiful children, they jump up and run over to hug her. And I think they all say mommy at the same time. It's really weird. But it begs the question, why were they going to let their mom marry somebody, some stranger, like sit there and marry somebody that's not their dad? I don't know. Whatever. It was cute the way that Jean wouldn't let go of her. It was kind of creepy, but also a little bit cute.
But then the Thomas thing doesn't last because Winnie pisses him off by not being subservient enough, basically. But this is also where we mentioned the ex-wife.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she's like, Mom made dinner in the kitchen or something. Or one of the kids says, Mom made dinner in the kitchen. Thomas is like, oh my God, is your mother here? Did I forget the alimony check? She never cooked for me when I was married. And I was just like, wow, this is... Can't imagine why she fucking left this guy and his shitty kids. Like, she's taking Allison Hannigan and fucking burned down the house. I also have a note that says pregnant Winnie. Was there a implication? There's a possible
Jean comes downstairs and says, Mom. And I think Thomas asked her, like, why did he call you mom? Are you pregnant? When they're alone,
before,
in the kitchen,
and then that raises the question of who knocked her up, and I was like, okay, I mean, sure, whatever, this fucking show.
I mean, they only live under the same roof. It's not like he would know if she's dating somebody or having sex in his house or whatever, like,
or if he's heading over, and that's just a subplot that they're not going to explore. There's some weird shit later on where Dave Coulier makes a comment about how, like, if they're not married, they're living in sin. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're a fucking warlock, right? Like, this is literal devil magic, isn't it? Like, like, so yeah.
Maybe in this world of free spirit, it's not communing with the devil. It's just being magic. I don't know. You had mentioned Pinball Wizard, and we kind of jumped over that.
Yeah. There's a scene where Dave Coulier uses magic lasers to play pinball. Pinball comes in at the end too. But do you want to talk about the Dave Coulier getting told what for?
Yeah.
Before we get there. Yeah.
So Winnie admits finally that she's not actually married to Thomas. And the reason she doesn't want to marry Kevin is because she doesn't love Kevin. And it's this weird, overwrought kind of thing where, like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Apparently Kevin can't take hints over 150 years that this woman didn't love him. And he starts, like, being whiny and annoying. Oh, I spent 150 years. Oh, I did all of these things. I risked my life so many times. And when he's like, shut up, stop it. And I was like, yay. It was like the one time I was like, thank you. The one redeeming thing of the show is her telling him to stop whining.
And then she sets him up with her sister, her first time ever mentioned sister, the four-armed Abigail, and he's thrilled that Abigail's got so many arms. And then she goes in to talk to Thomas, who's in his office playing the arcade games. And so this is where they have a little flirty moment where he talks about how, like, if they were really married, after they get done fighting, they head upstairs and, you know, post-fight fuck. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, nothing. Or something. Like, she doesn't get he like invites her upstairs to fuck. And she's like, what? So, you know, cool.
They're both a little clueless, I guess, sometimes, right?
Yeah. So, but that is their last attempt, their last chance to be flirty on the show. And then, my last note was Martin Pasco, whose name I saw in the credits, and I don't know if he's in the other credits. He wrote comic books in the early 80s. The most memorable is that he wrote the Swamp Thing comic before Alan Moore took it over to great success. So it's like I always knew this guy's name. And there's this thing where a lot of guys who worked in, I'm saying guys not as a general men and women, I'm saying guys because comic book writers were white men almost exclusively then, still are, but they would get into comics and then like try to segue into cartoons and then into live action. And so this is somebody who went from a relatively prestigious comic job to a shit TV job. Yeah. So there's what happens. You end up fucking working on this show, getting Dave Coulier.
Well, maybe he got his
snacks.
Writers Guild card out of the deal. You don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. But that was interesting. Okay. So now we're to the last episode, which is entitled...
I have finale written down because Love and Death. Love and Death.
Oh my God, this episode. So
this episode was sold to me on Wikipedia as Winnie's sister comes for a visit and takes Rob for a wild ride. But it ended up being so much worse than that in so many ways. So this has a guest star too. I don't know if you recognize the girl, Josie Davis. She was one of the sisters on what's that?
It's like Charles in Charge.
Charles in Charge.
But I'll just say #no Scott Baio. So not even when I was a kid. Yeah. So, but I think that was because my mom was like, you can't watch a show about this guy who's trying to fuck teenage girls. Yeah. And we didn't do our three things. Do we want to do our three things?
I have one thing written down.
Okay.
This episode was so awful. So I'm going to say flirting. I'm going to say family interaction. And those are the two that I have. Like, I just watched this episode half an hour before we started recording. And I just couldn't. Again, it was just kind of exhausting.
Okay, so mine are going to be turkey guts. What do you mean, wee mortal? And colder than a witch's
blank. Yeah.
Blank. So it is. The other thing is the episode opens with a snowy Harper House in the insert, which I was like, wow, they actually paid somebody to put some snow on that one still. That was impressive work. And also Gene has a new haircut. I don't know if you noticed that.
I didn't.
They trimmed the mullet.
He was barely in it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't even know if I have. Oh, I do have Jesse written down once. Oh, right, because they're sharing a bedroom, and that's where it comes back that he pees the bed, and also the implication that she spends her nights
kissing a pillow,
moaning. Yeah, kissing and moaning over a boy, which is, can't you wait till your brother's not in the room? Like, both of you, right? Like, Gene can stop playing with his dirty underwear, which is apparently what he does a lot. And she can stop, like, grinding her bed over, did I write down the kid's name? No.
I think it was Brad. I think it was Brad the paper boy.
Brad the paper boy who delivers.
Ugh.
Bada bing.
So this episode is full of flirting, innuendo, and it is so heavy, so thick, and so gross.
Because it's about Winnie's sister Cassandra, who comes to visit, and this is a prearranged thing. So it's unclear how old Cassandra's supposed to be, but presumably she's at least 150 years old, right? And she gets there and she loses her broom and has to like crash land, and she crash lands on Rob's lap, and her entire thing is going to be, let's fuck, 16-year-old boy. Let's fuck.
Yeah. And it's not even like,
oh no,
it's just let's fuck. I mean,
it's like, Winnie, who's that 16-year-old boy? I'm going to fuck him. Look at me wearing it. I just magicked on a swimsuit. So he will want to fuck me.
I'm shocked it wasn't a bikini. Let me be honest. I'm shocked.
They could have just done a fucking teddy. Like, really?
Put her in some lingerie. Oh God, it was so.
Okay.
I don't know. So she starts flirting with Rob. She's asking her sister, "Oh, does Rob have a boyfriend?" Oh, girlfriend. Sorry.
Rob would be so much more likable if he had a boyfriend.
Does Rob have a girlfriend? Oh, I guess I'm the 1,000,001st person to be after him, the 1,000,001 girls to be after him, and like does everything in her power to try to seduce this young boy, including there's a great spit take where she does magic on the swimsuit and Rob turns around and just spits out his juice when he sees her. You
just love them spit takes. You just love them.
I like any old-fashioned gags and goofs. I like. But before that, Gene comes in and has himself a little flirt with her too.
But she's not interested in him. She's interested in her brother.
She magics him a
bike.
He
wants a kiss. Yeah. And then she magics him a bike, and Winnie takes it away and she's like, that's not how we use our magic here. And I'm just kind of like, but why?
You just did an arcade in the last episode. You
right.
Just magicked an arcade.
The reason that I always thought that she didn't magic things into existence was because they weren't permanent. But like, I guess if they are now, why the fuck? Like, you're wasting your time. Like, again, Winnie didn't get a character arc for this show, so there was nothing about her wanting to like scrub by hand or whatever. So yeah, whatever. But then once she's in the swimsuit, she wants to go out and sun, and they're like, but it's snowing. So she magics a sunny area out there, and that's when Rob goes out and says, wow, it's colder than a witch's. Bum, bum. Can't
and
that.
She does the, oh, I have the sunglasses. She does the thing where she looks over her, she pulls her sunglasses down and looks up in a very sexy way while she's sipping on some kind of pool drink. I couldn't quite tell what it was.
And then she magics him into a swimsuit. Hold on, wait for it. It's a used swimsuit. It's her ex-boyfriend swimsuit who had a tail. And so Rob finds a hole in the back of it. And it's just like, you might be having some fun, kid. But also, it was never established that they were magicking old shit into reality.
Yeah. Like they've got a TARDIS that just is invisible and they can just grab things out of it. Yeah.
Teleport things out. Like, yeah, that's not great magic. That's,
Yeah.
But that's also when, okay, so then Thomas is going to come out and catch them because he wants to use his snowblower. And you got to think about how yuppie snowblowers would have been in 1990, right? Like, just so super yuppie.
And they disappear before he
she's
catches
going to take him, whitewater rafting. Where you just made quotation marks, but unfortunately, they don't need quotation marks. She takes him to Niagara Falls and they go over and he almost dies. And he's like freaking out. And that's when we get to the wonderful Winnie takes his temperature by sticking her finger in his mouth, which is just like...
And it comes out like Smurf blue.
Yeah, it's like weird. And then it's also 79 degrees, to which my note is, will he be dead?
He'd be dead.
So,
yeah. I mean, he probably would have died once he went over Niagara Falls, and he probably would have died at the end of the episode, which we'll get to. So there are multiple ways which Rob could have died. I wonder if the writers were just like imagining ways for Rob to die.
I mean, I certainly think seriously that. I just realized there's actually another butt play reference in this episode. But then Winnie takes her sister into the kitchen and explains to her while ripping apart a turkey that humans are very frail and you can break them very easily, which is like kind of the first time we've gotten into how, we've established that Winnie doesn't age. We've established all these other, and she has her magic and things like that. But we haven't established that she is of a superior race of creature. And so, Rob hears this and becomes obsessed with his mortality. And so Cassandra wants to do things, but Rob just wants to hang out in the house. And at one point she's like, he's given himself a home colon test, and I think he had a better time than I did.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Like, I remembered that and wrote it down like seconds ago. And I was like, we have to talk about the home colon kit. Because he had more fun with the home colon kit than he would with her. And then they do this very corny, and again, I can't blame her. I have to blame the writers, but her delivery also sucked. She's got all of these like really bad, like one-liners. She's like, he wouldn't know what to do with the girl if one fell into his lap. And then she kind of like looks and she's like, I did fall into his lap. And it's like, oh my God, this is so... Ugh. It was an exhausting episode.
Yeah. And so, we're not even there yet. Like, this is actually like
halfway.
Nothing. Yeah.
So this is the point where she decides she's going to leave. She's like, I'm not having any fun here. I hate it here because
humans suck. And when Winnie's like, no, it's great. She's like, you've been hanging out with them too long. They suck and you suck.
You suck too. So this gets to my family relations thing. Who knows how long it's been? So we established in the last episode, and we didn't talk about it, that like the rest of the family wanted to come to the wedding, but they had tickets to Phantom or something, right? Wasn't it Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah.
And then the dad is like, oh, we're not a very close family. So who knows how long it's been since she's talked to her sister, Cassandra. And now she's just leaving. One, weird. Two, Jesse and Thomas never interacted with her. And it goes completely unmentioned. Thomas has some more interaction with Winnie at the end. There's no mention. Oh, did your sister leave? How are you doing with your sister? What are we doing for dinner tonight with your sister? Like, there's no mention of it.
No.
There's no mention of it. I thought that was really fucking weird.
Because here's the thing. They couldn't do it with Jesse because why would you bother having her talk to Jesse? Because they're not going to make sex jokes about it. You could never talk to Thomas because they would have to make sex jokes. Ugh. And then you would have her, like Rob and Thomas, or Rob, fighting over the fucking sister and just like, no, like, yeah. So, Thomas's scene is Rob making him think about death too, to the point that Thomas doesn't want to like go play golf or whatever. And so, I don't think they talk about whether or not Thomas still works at home. Like, I don't know if there's continuity with last episode.
Yeah.
But
I don't he goes into his office to clean up though at some point at the beginning. Remember when he locks him in.
So he got fired already from his job, probably for sexually harassing that stacked lawyer. Okay. So I forgot to mention this during the radio episode. Winnie has teleportation powers. We've established that it's like long established, and it comes in big time in this episode. She could have teleported Thomas home. She could have teleported Gene to the radio station to, what do you call it? To say goodnight to him. Like, there's all sorts of, this whole show with teleportation powers is different. But
she would have had to admit to Thomas that she was magic. In those instances that you mentioned, Thomas would wonder how the hell Gene got there.
she could freeze him again until his brain got too cold to remember what was going on, which she's already done on the show. Like,
Fair enough.
And it's
Fair
also unclear from the pilot and subsequent episodes. Thomas can't know she's magic. Does that mean he can't know she's magic? They've also sort of thrown away the thing that witches are assigned to children, which is weird since there's been so many more witches. But I almost took it as like Thomas couldn't comprehend her being magic. So like, no matter what, he would never know that magic existed, like in a very Disney witch way. For the relaunch, right? For the reboot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Whitney's solution to making Rob feel better about dying is to make him go skydiving.
And she gets hit on by the guy who's running the skydiving, who's not actually
the instructor. Yeah.
The instructor who looks familiar, but I can't place him. And I didn't look him up.
You didn't look him up. He is Michael McManus, he's known for things like Poltergeist, Police Academy 4, and Hot Shots Part 2.
Winnie was in Police Academy 4. Corinne Bohrer was in Police Academy 4. Yeah.
That's right. I believe in Poltergeist, he plays one of the shitty bro neighbor friends of
the dad,
Craig T. Nelson.
Yeah, Craig T. Nelson. Yeah. I just watched that. That was really good.
Yeah.
And so
it's not like Free Spirit. It's good.
It's good. So they go skydiving, and they spend way too long Winnie spends way too much time trying to convince this kid to go skydiving, to face his fears and da-da-da-da-da. And everybody else is just a setup for a joke about how, there's not much chance of you surviving, and you're going to die, and you're going to get hurt. And it's a little much. And then Winnie decides to prove to Rob that she can face her fears. She's going to remove her magic, which she does by touching her finger to her nose and then having a bunch of weird colors come off of her, and then skydive without her magic. So she knows how it feels to be mortal. And then she jumps, but Rob doesn't. And eventually, through some gag, falls out of the open door and falls. You have something to say.
I do. She didn't get rid of her magic. She lied about it to Rob.
She lied about it, yeah.
So how old was he in this? Like, because they brought up in previous episodes, like, I can't trust you with my children and things like that. But I'm like, if she actually thinks it's a good idea to 1968, he was 22, which also explains why their last scene together on the couch seems more like a couple than
it does seem a little bit more chummy than like a parent or caregiver.
But yeah. So it's like, your caregiver takes your 16-year-old who's deathly afraid and is like, no, you need to like fucking get thrown out of a plane on the worst skydiving school on the Eastern Seaboard, who's had like the most injuries.
And nobody seems to realize that these two people just appeared mid-air on this plane. Like, this plane is in flight and these two people just appear. There's only besides the instructor, 3 other people?
Yeah.
It would be pretty obvious. It was, anyway, I shouldn't get hung up on that because this is a bad show.
So then they jump out, and the ending gag, we'll skip ahead to it because it doesn't really matter, is that they both have broken legs, and Winnie magics hers better because she's a witch and he's the punk mortal, basically. And it's just kind of like, I can see who the fuck wanted to watch this? Like, we've gotten to the point, like, especially with this weird, she can't, like, she has the realization that she needs to pretend to make herself or pretend she's mortal very late in this intervention, right? Like,
there's less death defying things that they could have done if she had taken her powers away to help him overcome his fear, or send the fucking kid to therapy.
And he never overcomes his fear, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, my sister, tried to manslaughter you, and now I'm going to also try to manslaughter you, except it's not my fault because the plane turned. Yeah. And she at least intentionally put him in danger or something. Like, yeah, it's a really bad finish to not just everything, just the experience. Because it's like, it's the least, it's the most, I don't want to like place too much agency on Winnie, like broadly with this, but it's the worst writing on her character, I think, in the show.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's never been anything where she's been this, the Jean episode with the watch, like that would be the runner up. But this was, no, I'm gonna try to convince you that you want to live by showing you death. Like,
again. Yeah. He already faced death when he went down the falls. Anyway, it's over, Andrew. It's over.
It's over. Remember at the beginning when you were like, "I like this show more than you do."
Here's the thing.
Our tone is like.
Here's the thing. I can sit and watch it, but like thinking about it and writing it down and like talking about it, it's like, wow, this is really bad. Even the Dave Coulier stuff, it's like, I've seen worse. I mean, he sucks, but I've seen worse. And I can sit and watch dumb shit all day long, but because I can zone it out. But when you have to actually look at it and
you're paying attention. Nobody ever intended anyone to pay this much attention to Free Spirit.
No. So yes, it's wore me down a little bit. It's wore me down a little bit.
But our announcement for next season, which will actually start next week or a week from when this releases, is not hopefully a blunder. It is Freaks and Geeks, which I've never seen.
You've never seen Freaks and Geeks? Oh, good.
Never seen Freaks and Geeks.
It's obviously it's from, oh God, I should have looked this up. It's from
Judd Apatow, right?
Yeah. But it's a more current, but it's still 20 years old. And it kind of, I mean, a lot of people had their careers launched, maybe not necessarily because of the show. So it's from 1999. So it's 23 years old. But after the show aired, a lot of really famous people came out of it. Yep. And, so because it's more modern, any kind of grossness that we've experienced with this in terms of misogyny and racism and homophobia will be addressed, I think, in a very different way with this teen comedy / drama from 1999.
Yeah, so we're going to do 2 of those an episode since it's an hour long or a 43-minute long or whatever. And so hopefully we will not get to the point where we just sit around bitching about the show. And hopefully Robert Reed won't show up and give a bad cameo.
But there are lots of really good special guests. It's really good.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. I just never got around to it.
That's fine.
So thank you for listening to our first season talking about Free Spirit. Don't fucking watch this show. Sorry. It's a pain in the ass to watch. And also don't watch it. But Corinne Bohrer is awesome. So there's that still. Yeah. But Dave Coulier sucks.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. Do 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 do. Do 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 boo do 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 boo 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 doo.